Drinking buddies, we are here to talk about home aging experience, home blends you can do at home. I've compiled a list of everyone I've tried, some I haven't. Maybe you can give me some feedback in the comments down below if you've tried them. Let's go.
I'm your drinking buddy.
All right, drinking buddies. So I poured in this glass one that we're going to talk about a little later because I realized that the barrel spiral was still in there, meaning this has been aging for over a year. I'm going to have to put the correct date right here, but I believe this might even have been aging for 2 years. So this could be really wild. But anyway, I thought we would start off extremely simple with Benchmark Home Foolproof. Now, I think you can do this one of two ways. You take a barrel aging spiral, drop it in there for 2 weeks, you have Poor Man's Stag. You drop a barrel aging spiral in there and let it go for 6 months or more, you have Poor Man's GTS. So first, Poor Man's GTS. That's a $20 bottle plus a $7 or $8 spiral. I do have a link in the description down below. If you want to buy one of my spirals, click on my Amazon, or not my spirals, but if you want to buy one of the spirals, there's an Amazon affiliate in the description. Next up, we have Poor Man's Birthday. And this is a really fun one. I had an old birthday bourbon bottle. I've never owned birthday bourbon, but I have the bottle that somebody was nice enough to give me, Marco. Thank you. But anyway, the way you make this one is 1 part 1910 from Old Forester to 1 part Old Forester Statesman. Now, I think you can up that proof a little bit. So for mine, I went ahead and added in 2 ounces of Old Forester barrel strength. If you don't want to go that route, you could do 2 ounces of 1910, or you could leave it out completely. The general recipe is 1 part 1910 to 1 part Statesman. Now, that would be Poor Man's Birthday Bourbon, but I take it an extra step further. I dropped a barrel spiral in there for a few months, and yeah, I believe it's still in here. No, I did finally take it out. Because it was at a really good place where it was actually starting to get too oaky. Because you're dealing with 1910, which is already double oak, so you don't need to do the spiral. Next one, a really simple one. You don't need a spiral for this one at all. It's called Old Bird. You're going to take 1 part Russell's Reserve 10-year to 1 part Rare Breed. And that will give you an older tasting rare breed at a slightly lower proof. And I have not tried aging that one. I don't think you should. I think that one's better to just enjoy as is. And you could do that in a glass, actually. You don't need to do a whole bottle of it or anything like that. These types of bottles are really fun to do these types of experiments, because then you can go for smaller experiments. This was actually a larger experiment. I just bottled it for my channel members in case they wanted to buy it. This one was pretty wild. This is not on my list, but what this ended up being is I blended together a bunch of wheated bourbons and I finished them with a bunch of different staves. So I intentionally did it. It wasn't like, oh, here's this one and this one and this one. I blended wheated bourbons together that I thought would make a really nice complex whiskey, and then I dropped some aging spirals in there. So I did some Amberana, but it was only Amberana'd for 12 hours, and only a small portion of this whiskey was done with Amberana. So caution number 1, if you're doing home aging, caution on Amberana. I probably wouldn't recommend using it at all, but if you do use it, do not age it for more than 12 hours. You will ruin your whiskey and it'll taste like cat pee. It's just the way Amberana works. It's powerful, it's magic, and not in a good way. If you want to get that nice Cinnamon Toast Crunch flavor, 12 hours max. Trust me on this. But yeah, and then there's also a maple spiral in there, as well as American oak spirals. So that one was just a fun experiment. I called it Taters. Next up, we have Poor Man's Pappy. Now, this is the one that started it all off because a viewer more than 2 years ago wrote a comment. Man, what was it? Will Fitz, I believe is his name. Anyway, he dropped a comment and he's like, you should try mixing. This is probably 3 years ago at least. Anyway, he's like, you should try mixing 2 parts Maker's Cask Strength to 1 part Larceny Small Batch. And that's called Prudent Pappy, and you might like it. And I was like, I'm going to try that. And so this is like my 4th Prudent Pappy I've made, 3rd or 4th, I don't know, something like that. You write the little proof on there. I made a cool label for it just for fun, because George Costanza is an hilarious character, and I just thought that'd be funny. But this one was barrel spiral aged. Now, while we're on the subject of barrel spirals, I do often get comments from people who say that they did a spiral for a week and it was too much. So I would recommend, if you are going to try out any of these experiments, only use the spirals if you're using 750 milliliters or more. And also, if you're sensitive to oak, maybe pull it out early. because I'm someone that loves those older, maybe even over oaked flavors you get out of something like, Pappy 20 or, Calumet 16 or Knob 18 or, those types of things that some people might consider over oaked. I love. So I'm not sensitive to oak. I'm not afraid for it to get too oaky. I don't know if there's a such thing as too oaky. I don't think there's more than 5 whiskeys I've ever tried in my entire life that I thought were over oaked. And like, I might need to try Pappy 23 again. I think my palate was kind of shocked when I tried it. So I don't know. Maybe it isn't as over oaked as I remember. Anyway, long story short, be careful with the spirals. Taste it. It's not an experiment that you set and forget. It's an experiment that you set and then you taste it along the way. Now, I know there's examples about that. I did admit that I forgot the spiral that I forgot about the spiral that I put in this Prudent Old Fitz, which we'll talk about next. I forgot about the spiral that was in there. And so it was in there, I think, 2 years. I'm going to put the exact date right here. But anyway, how do you make Prudent Old Fitz? I made it by accident. I was trying to make a reverse Prudent Pappy, and it was 2 parts Larceny barrel proof to 1 part regular Makers, and it ended up tasting kind of like Old Fitz. Marco and I both agreed it was kind of Old Fitzy in flavor. And so that's what I have here. 2-ish year aged, home aged Prudent Old Fitz. And I didn't age it in this Old Fitzgerald bottle. I just poured it in here for presentation. I don't think you should actually store whiskey in crystal decanters because you could seep lead into them. That is oaky. So I have some Old Fitz samples, and I've been meaning to do a video with them, and I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do because I don't have enough of them to do like a full Old Fitz episode, but I think I do if I use that. So you might be seeing that soon where I compare this to like Old Fitz 19 and Old Fitz 11 and stuff like that, because I think this could compete. It's really tasty, and it's got that Heaven Hill flavor profile as long as some nice oak, little cherry, a little bit of a like medicine-y cherry, because that's what you get off the older oaky whiskeys. I dig that. I do dig that. That is a great experiment. Success. All right. So next up, on the same... So actually, a minute ago, I talked about Prudent Pappy. I hope I didn't mince words and say poor man's Pappy, because I need to make a very clear distinction. So there's Prudent Pappy and there's poor man's Pappy. So I believe I called Prudent Pappy poor man's Pappy earlier, and I apologize. But poor man's Pappy is 2 parts Antique 107 to 1 part Weller 12. Prudent Pappy is 2 parts Maker's Cask Strength to 1 part Larceny Small Batch. Why do I think Prudent Pappy is better? Well, I've tasted them side by side, and Prudent Pappy is better. Second, you're kind of defeating the purpose of making a unicorn if you're using 2 unicorns to make it. Antique 107 and Weller 12 are really hard to find. Any of the blends that I'm using up here shouldn't be using anything super hard to find. You should be able to find this stuff. In this Old Fitzgerald, yes, there's some Larceny barrel proof in there, but that's becoming a lot easier to find than it used to be. That would be one that I used to have to hunt for, and now I can pretty much buy it anytime I want. So just throwing it out there. There should be no hard-to-use ingredients in here. All right, Prudent WLW. This is another one that I made. This is a unique one to me. I made this one up, like the Prudent Old Fitz, but made this because I wanted to use Larceny barrel proof and Maker's Cask Strength. So this was 1 part Larceny barrel proof to 2 parts Maker's Cask Strength. And I specifically used one of the wood finishing series that didn't use French oak. So as long as it says, 10 virgin American oak staves on it, you can use that bottle. Or you can just use Maker's Cask Strength. You don't have to use the FAE01, which is the one that I used. But I used that because I wanted there to be even more oak on it. Dropped a barrel spiral in there, 2 weeks. This is excellent. This is a really good bottle. I think this would do really well in blinds against unicorns. I really do. And you can make it at home with bottles that you can find. Poor Man's Saz 18. This is another one that I haven't seen out there in the ethers. This is one that I've done where you just take Sazerac rye, you drop a barrel spiral in there, and you end up with an older tasting Sazerac rye. And I think it is similar, not quite as good, but similar to Saz 18 for, a much, 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 much cheaper price. Next up, 1915. This is a classic. There's no barrel spiral in this one. You can mix this one in a glass, or you can, better yet, mix it in a bottle, wait 2 weeks and try it then, because the whiskey marrying together, getting to mingle and everything, does end up with a better product. So I would say If you can wait a week, 2 weeks, pour it into maybe a smaller bottle, mix together 1910 and 1920 equal parts. You have 1915, and it is very good. Poor man's 1924. So this year, Old Forester released its 1924 release, which is a 10-year-old bottled and bond whiskey. And I suggest that you just take a bottle of Evan Williams. You take a bottle of Early Times bottled and bond, drop a barrel aging spiral in there, and you have an older tasting Early Times bottled and bond, which is the same mash bill as the 1924. They're the same mash bill whiskey. So you can make a pretty close approximation. And in fact, I liked the Early Times, the Poor Man's 1924, much more than the 1924. As you guys know, I was not a big fan of the 1924. I think that is one of the most disappointing whiskeys I have ever tasted, but that was just my palate. You feel free to love it if you do. Next up, Shankburger. Now this is another one you can mix in the glass, you can mix in a bottle, whatever you do. You take equal parts Shanks and Bombergers from the Michter's distillery, and these two are hard to find. So I will admit this is the one that might be in that unicorn territory where they're harder to find whiskeys, but if you have both at home, I recommend trying a Shankburger. All right, now we are going to get in ones that I've never tried before that I've seen online and I've been curious about. So if you have had any of these, I need you guys to drop a comment down below and let me know if you've tried it and whether or not I should do it myself. So first up, we have Poor Man's High Rye. Now, a great subscriber left this in a comment recently. He said to take 2 parts of the Buffalo Trace Kosher Straight Rye to 1 part E.H. Taylor bib. Now, I know these two are hard to find bottles, but it was something that was recommended from a viewer, so I thought I would mention it because it does sound very interesting. And it would give you a high rye mash bill. You know, basically, you're blending a bourbon and a rye, you're making a blue rye, but your mash bill would still be mostly corn, so it would be in that bourbon territory, but it would also be very high rye. So could be something cool to try out. If you can't find the 2 bottles that I mentioned, you might be able to use the bonded benchmark and the just regular regular baby Saz, so regular 90 proof Sazerac rye, and you might get similar notes. Next up, we have Poor Man's 4 grain. So you take 2 parts Weller Special Reserve to 1 part Old Grandad 114. This one sounds like it would benefit from a spiral, whereas the last one didn't, but who knows? Maybe both could. Next up, Poor Man's Eagle Rare 17. So online I read that people use 2.5 parts of Eagle Rare to 1 part Benchmark Full Proof. And this one to me sounds like it might also benefit from a spiral, get you that extra age in the Eagle Rare 17. Next up, we have Poor Man's Midwinter Night's Dram. I did see this one on Reddit, but somebody took 730 milliliters of double rye from High West, and they added in 20 milliliters of Taylor Port wine to make that midwintery flavor vibes going on. And that sounds very interesting to me. I'm very curious how that would work out. And then last up, Poor Man's Wild Turkey Master's Keep Unforgotten. Now that was a brew rye, and so the recommended blend was 1 part rare breed rye with 1 part Russell's Reserve 10. And I think this is a very interesting idea. It would actually be pretty similar in proof, pretty similar in derived mash bill, and pretty similar in age. Not that much difference. And the the Master's Keep Unforgotten was a $200 bottle. So if you can approximate that at home, that's pretty cool. All right, so cards on the table. A lot of people will tell me that the barrel spirals are all BS and they're not real and they ruin your whiskey, and they're not going to add any Kentucky to your whiskey. I would say to those people, you have to try it. You cannot knock it until you try it. But I would also say we're not dealing with new make here. We are dealing with whiskeys that were good to begin with. We are just adding more complexity to them. We're giving it a little extra age to them. And that spiral is going to do it a lot faster than it will in a barrel in Kentucky. So especially if you live in Tucson, I sometimes do these experiments in my garage so that I'm getting more oak extraction faster. It's not aging faster, it's getting more oak extraction faster. So that does sometimes mean that you will still get youthy notes on some of these whiskeys if you drop a spiral in there. You cannot, age that away in 2 weeks. You can sometimes age that away in a year. Now, I would say this Benchmark Full Proof, for example, you do the Poor Man's Stag, you're still going to get those youthy grain notes that you get off the Benchmark Full Proof on the nose, on the palate. You're still going to get some of that. But if you leave it in there for 6 to 8 months, that's gone. You just end up with something that is similar to George T. Stagg. You're going to end up with something that is similar, maybe even better than some Stagg Juniors. It is a fact. You have to try it before you knock it. So I highly recommend you use the link in the description, pick up some barrel aging spirals, drop one in maybe a bottle you didn't love. Let me know if it turns out better than it was before. Like maybe you bought a bottle of, here's another one I did. So I didn't love the Dickel 8-year bourbon. It just wasn't for me. So I dropped a little tiny chunk of Amberana in there for 12 hours, like a tiny, tiny chunk for 12 hours. And it ended up being like, it's still an Amberana cinnamon bomb, but it's a very unique, interesting whiskey that I could see myself going to, whereas the Dickel 8-year was going to be something I ended up giving away. So you can salvage a whiskey with some of these spirals. You can salvage a whiskey by doing some blending. Blending isn't as easy as taking a good whiskey A and mixing with good whiskey B, and then you end up with good whiskey C that's even better. Sometimes you end up with whiskey C that sucks. That happens when you blend. Like maybe the flavor profiles didn't mesh with each other. Maybe they clash. Maybe they don't work. And so therefore, experimentation is required. Let me know what you've experimented with in the past. Drop a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you. I couldn't do this without you, especially my channel members. You guys make this thing work. Cheers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
I'm your drinking buddy.